back to the Kyber Collective. I'm one of your three hosts, Flowers. I'm joined by Sig.
Hello.
And Annie.
Hey there.
Today we are tackling Jedi Fallen Order. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for some time, but haven't really had the opportunity. So I think here was a really good place to just kind of sneak it in. And I felt like this would be a really good idea because when I searched online, a lot of the reviews for this, understandably, were all about the game and the gameplay, and some of it was about the story, but it was mostly about the video game itself and its quality, which is all fine. But I wanted to just kind of focus on more of the story and how this fits into the larger Star Wars universe. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that not everyone listening has played this game and has no interest in playing in the game, but might have interest in hearing about it and learning about it. And Annie, I know you haven't played this, so I thought we would start with just we'll start with a quick, just a run through, like the speediest run through I can think of understanding what the story is and how it ends. So the premise of this game, of this story, is that 5 years after the Jedi Purge and the Galactic Republic's conversion into the Galactic Empire, former Jedi Padawan Cal Kestis is hiding on a planet called Braca, where he works as a scrapper. He salvages ships from the Clone Wars, which is super sad when you're playing it because you see them. After Cal is recorded by an Imperial probe droid using the Force to save his friend, two Inquisitors known as the Second Sister and the Ninth Sister come to investigate. Cal makes his escape. He briefly duels with the Second Sister before he is rescued by former Jedi Knight Saray Junda. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name. I don't remember how it's pronounced. And her partner, who's the pilot Grease, on their ship, the Stinger Mantis. So the arc that Cal experiences in this game is pretty layered. So there's the main goal, which is to rebuild the Jedi Order. That's what they're all striving to do. And you do that by finding this lost holocron that has the names of Force-sensitive children. And Cal needs to find this before the Second Sister / the Empire does, because that's bad news. Then you have Saray, who is the Second Sister, Trilla, her name is Trilla, her former master, who abandoned Trilla during the Purge. She briefly also turned to the dark side at this time when she realized what Trilla had become. You have Trilla, who is the tortured and twisted Second Sister, who she's twisted to the dark side after Saray abandoned her. And then you have Cal Kestis, who unfortunately watched his master, Jaro Tapal, get killed during Order 66. But he did manage to escape with his master's help. And throughout the game, he experiences a lot of survivor's guilt and guilt for not being able to save his master and that his master was killed off because of him. This is something that he wrestles with. And so because of all of this, he cuts himself off from the Force, and kind of throughout the game, the journey you see is him kind of processing finally the traumatic experiences that he had and learning to accept what happened, accept that it wasn't his fault that this happened, and it wasn't the cause of his master's death. And he ultimately, Cal's connection to the Force is restored. And the conclusion of the game, after a very terrifying encounter with Darth Vader, the group decides to let the holocron get destroyed. So they destroy the holocron, and they decide that the Force-sensitive children are better off living their lives and forging their own path rather than trying to rebuild the Jedi Order and effectively kind of draft them into a war, or worse, a death sentence. So that is the complete arc of Jedi Fallen Order. Game-wise, I'm just going to add, it was fantastic. It was fantastic to play.
It's so good. Like, it's funny when you read that back and you like listen to the story, which is already quite good, but because it's like an interactive thing, like when you were talking about like Cal's master being killed in Order 66, like we've seen a lot of Order 66 flashbacks, but none have got me so hard as the one that happened in the game, because I was I was Cal, and he was so little and I had to look after him, and it was so stressful.
It is, especially because in the flashback you see like tiny Cal and like the other Clone troopers are
Yeah.
there and they know him and they love him and they're taking care of him. They're like, oh, good luck with your meeting with your master today. And then immediately you see them, the Order 66 happens and those same loving relationship is now just murder.
Yeah.
It's just jarring. So yeah, when you're actually playing it and you're playing as Cal, you really experience, just what that was like. And I was a mess when I played this and I reached that part. So,
Yeah.
oof, it's one of the most immersive Order 66 experiences I think like you can get that's really thoughtfully done because you're living it through him and he's just I also think he was a fantastic character like, to have experienced it through him.
Yes.
One thing I forgot to mention throughout this is Cal, the main character, he I forget what it's called. I actually did write this down. This is terrible. Oh yeah, so Cal has the ability to see force memories of places and objects through retrocognition slash psychometry or psychometry. So if he touches something or he's near something, he sees like a impression of what happened in the past. So that's also really cool. One, to see how things happened in these really desolate places that he visits, and also just force powers. It's really cool to get to see. So, having heard this and heard the speediest recap of this story ever, what are your first impressions just of this story and I guess in the broader Star Wars universe? Like, how do you feel this fits?
I mean, I think it fits really well. It is almost my favorite version of some of these things. Not quite, but like the way Vader comes off in this game, because you have a first person perspective, it's kind of unlike other versions of it. So like the same way I feel about the Order 66 scene, the Vader scene is pants-wettingly terrifying. I mean, just
Yeah.
like the most intense. And I think Cal, the character, does make it work. I mean, if you're not into Jedi, it's probably not for you. But this is like, for me, one of my favorite Jedi, continuation after like Order 66, because it gives you a glimpse into what his life has been like. The psychometry allows you to fill in the blanks of all of these lost moments as they happen. You're looking
Yeah.
at what the Order is going to look like going forward, and then you have to make that terrible decision of, what do we do with this holocron and this information, and is it better to have it or not have it, and can we rebuild the Jedi Order? And it's got all of the Star Wars themes that you could possibly hope for. So much of it is about hope, but also loss at the same time, and they're very closely intermingled. I think it fits really, really nicely within the Star Wars universe, and I'm looking forward to the second one. I wish we had more games like this or more
Yeah.
stories like this. I think it would do really well as some kind of live action or in another format. The actual plot itself, I think, is fairly solid.
Yeah.
It's just good.
I find it super interesting that they made this video game, but it's like part of canon. It is canon, and I guess I don't know enough franchises personally that do that, where like a video game is part of the larger canon of a certain universe. But I found that incredibly fascinating. I also loved that they did so much like mocap work, like so much motion capture. Like they had actual actors play these roles, which is I think not so uncommon anymore. But you really see it in the game itself. And I know this is departing from the story, but you really get to see these characters come to life. And I think that really helped when you're into this world.
Yeah, it really pays off for Trilla, especially.
Yes, it really pays off for Trilla. It's just comprehensively one of my favorite Star Wars stories. It just fits so seamlessly. And I agree. I wish there were more of this. Like there's a lot of Star Wars games. I think there's a lot of like, the Old Republic is out there, Knights of the Old Republic, and there's some new ones that are coming out that I don't remember the name of. And there's like Battlefront, and there was some Vader game that I saw a while ago. But none of them, I think, have been as poignant as this one and very rooted in, I think, the lore and the essence of what Star Wars is, which is hope and dealing with loss. And I don't know, it's just all the good stuff and lots of Jedi stuff. It's all the things that I look for in a story for Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree.
Did anyone else here notice that this story has a remarkable similarity to a very beloved Obi-Wan Kenobi series? Like it's almost eerily similar.
Yeah,
I thought it sounds like Caleb.
Yeah, I think if you merge Obi-Wan and the backstory for Kanan, you get this.
Which are two fantastic properties in Star Wars, like Obi-Wan and Kanan / Caleb. And you really see it. Like when I was watching the Kenobi show, they had some very obvious nods to Fallen Order with like the Inquisitorial Palace. I don't remember what the proper name is, and like locations and things were being mentioned. I was like, oh,
wait. It's the, what is it? The Palace Inquisitorius. And it's not the palace, but it's ridiculous.
it's like a really silly name.
So, of course, it's perfect for them. But
yeah.
yeah, that's a good name.
Yeah, it has the Inquisitors in it, and I think Trilla was one of the stronger points of this story. Like she had this arc of she was abandoned by her master, she was tortured by, I guess, the Empire / dark side users, and became what she was out of her experiences and out of being let down and learning from that. And by the end of it, she tragically, this might be a spoiler if you actually want to play the game, but Vader kills her, and she basically kind of looks at Cal and Sari and is like,
avenge us,
give him hell.
Yeah.
And it's just, you feel that too, like with this character who you've been at odds with, almost died interacting with. She kicks Cal's ass pretty spectacularly more than once.
Yeah.
She's incredibly powerful, and she spends a lot of time in this story kind of highlighting the hypocrisy of what he's like, his faith in the Jedi and his belief in what the light side of the Force can do for him. And you really see where she's coming from.
Yeah.
Like when you see the complete arc, because she stops being a foil and she starts being somebody you feel sorry for.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it stand out. And I'm not super familiar with the comics, but having watched Rebels, which I think is where we generally see a lot of the Inquisitors and Obi-Wan, I think she's the most successful kind of version of driving pathos for these Inquisitors. I think Reva maybe didn't land as effectively for people. I don't think we get very much of it in Rebels.
Yeah.
And I guess the only one that comes to mind now is maybe Andor, with the way that they're looking at people who work for the Empire.
Yeah.
But I think Trilla was just so... It walked that line so well of her being uncompromisingly ruthless. And, you didn't think that, she's actually quite nice deep down.
Yeah.
But you just had a sense of the incredible loss and the incredible cost and everything that had brought her to this point. And there was just this incredible buildup of pathos. And it's interesting that they tried to retread really similar ground with Reva. But I think part of what makes Trilla work is that moment of avenge us, when like Vader just treats her like she's come to be a person.
Yeah.
You come to feel for her. And he treats her like garbage. I mean, he just kills her, and it's not even like he cared. It was like she was in the way.
Yeah, she was standing in front of him in the way.
It was like he couldn't be bothered to walk around her. And I think that's kind of what's missing from Reva, maybe. We're circling back to conversations we had during Kenobi. But I think that was almost what sealed it for me, was the futility of her loss, I guess.
Yeah. I think she is a successful Inquisitor by far of the ones that we've seen so far. Like you said, in Rebels, they're more kind of like henchmen and like kind of like rubbing their hands.
Yeah, they're Team Rocket.
The Team Rocket. Trilla was probably the most humanized and I think realistic interpretation of what an Inquisitor actually, what happened for an Inquisitor to exist. I would say, actually, when you briefly see what happened to the Grand Inquisitor, you kind of felt that for him, like for like a second, right before he died. In Rebels.
Yeah. I guess there's also that arc in the temple with Ezra, where we find out that he was a temple guard.
He was a temple guard,
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, because you get to see that flashback, you really understand what this person used to be and just how good they were and what circumstances led to who they are now. And I think that might actually be a running theme of this game, of this story, of like what stuff happened to these people and that they are who they are now. And you see Cal's arc, you see Sari's arc, you even see Trilla's arc. I think to a lesser extent you don't really see the Night Sister Marin's arc, but you see why she is as angry as she is.
Yeah.
that reminds me, I don't think I touched on Marin at all, and I have done a huge disservice because she is one of the coolest characters in Star Wars and this game. So let me just briefly go over Marin. So one of the arcs in this game is you have to go to Dathomir. There's something that Cal has to do or receive or figure out. And he comes across Night Sister Marin. She is the last surviving Night Sister on Dathomir. She blames the Jedi for killing all the Night Sisters during the Clone Wars, and she vows to be rid of Cal while he's there. And she is often, foiling his plans and sending poor Night Brothers, who you have to kill. This is the hardest part of the game. I'm like, I don't want to kill your people, but you keep coming at me and I can't avoid it in the game. But that's its own thing. But eventually, she realizes that she was wrong about what happened, and she joins Cal and his crew and tries to help him where she can. And she's just another really cool, fleshed out kind of character that you really come to appreciate and you want on her side because she can do some little wizardry magic, witchcraft. And there's a lot of similarity in her life experience as well. And I have a note here about the Night Sister Marin's. She has the other Night Sisters are in their little cocoons. That's how you bury them. I think if you remember, they showed that in the Clone Wars, and she has that there as well. And you have these essentially zombies, and that's how she remembers her people. And then you see that in contrast with Cal's ability to see the Force memories and places and objects. And there's like this little duality, this little parallel happening in how you remember things. And
I like that. They're both haunted by the loss of their people.
I know, it's so sad. And she's literally around just a graveyard of them in memory of them.
Yeah.
And that's how she remembers them. And talking that through, I don't think that's very dissimilar of Cal, because if he goes through anywhere, I mean, the imprint of the Jedi is everywhere.
Yes.
He's constantly walking through memories of them.
Yeah.
Not even with Force touching.
Well, and also, I mean, his aim is to infiltrate various Jedi temples, so he's explicitly going to places where there will be, and part of him going into the old temples is finding these memories and accessing this record of the past that's only accessible to him.
Yeah, it's just so nice to see some kind of full circle that comes about in this. And I guess my next question is, why does this type of storytelling evoke such emotion? And it's one of my favorites, getting to see a journey like this. Like, why do you think, we've talked about Star Wars and their quote unquote formula. You have a child, you have an adult, they have to take care of them. That's one of their formulas that they're really successful in right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is another one of showing loss and grief and processing through it and then overcoming it. The Cal's story is not dissimilar to Kanan's. Ezra is really, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan. You see it almost exclusively in the Jedi, but you do see it in other characters from the before and the after, and they're all kind of going through the same motions. This is a slight Andor spoiler, but you see, Cassian's life before, when he was younger, and then you see what he is now. And the Empire has affected everybody.
Yeah.
Relentlessly and ruthlessly, the entire galaxy. So why, all that jibber jabbering aside, having said all that, why do you think this type of storytelling is so successful?
For me, I guess it's both fundamental to the nature of the Jedi, this constant cycle of as each of us, as people move through the world, we will experience things that are difficult and we will eventually experience loss. And that's part of life. Obviously, I'm very much hoping none of us experience loss on the scale of the loss of the entire Jedi Order. But how we deal with grief, I think, is one of, the things in life that is truly human, because it's an experience that we'll probably all at one point have to go through. And so it ties into kind of the Jedi in the sense of how to let go of that and how to not dwell on that grief and not be trapped by it and move past it and move through it and, live in the moment as it is now. And the hope that comes with that, as things have changed previously, so they can change again. But then also just as stories that we relate to as people, there is something really compelling about the moment after, I guess, a massive trauma, and then watching people kind of pick up and move on in the hope that's embedded in that. And I think that's one of the things that's really successful about Star Wars. And there's something very satisfying to me about kind of dancing around the same motif over and over again, because that is kind of how legends and fables work. And so if we're reinventing legends and we're retelling fairy tales, then it makes sense that we're picking themes that are broadly very human, but also kind of recycling them and looking at them at different angles and kind of turning it around like a prism to see what shakes out.
For me, I like these kinds of stories because it's like how each individual goes on this journey, but it's one that is alone. Like Kanan's alone for a while, Cal's alone, Obi-Wan's alone, and like how they do that, because each of them go about it in different ways. Like Kanan, becomes a little criminal for a while.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan it's like that Nine Inch Nails song, every day is exactly the same, day in and day out. And I think all of us can definitely relate to that. I mean, not all of us are have gone through this insanely traumatic ordeal, but we've all felt alone and have had to deal with that in our own way and come out of that somehow. Also all three of them, Obi-Wan, Cal, and Kanan, they all three successfully overcame their loneliness or what have you, their despair. So I think it's just something that we can all relate to.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's all stemming from something really difficult you're experiencing, and how do you see the other side of it, and is it possible? Is it even possible to have another side of it? Because it feels so hopeless. And I think Star Wars at its core, even when the most dire and most unhappy things can happen, you can still see a light out at the other end of the tunnel, which is, I find so remarkable. Because the story, when you think about Star Wars, it's an incredibly depressing story, and I normally don't do depressing. I can't handle it anymore. But Star Wars is different in that it really connects to you, and it shows you how you can get through something really difficult. And I love that kind of storytelling. I think that's why, of all the Star Wars things in general, that's the type of story I go back to over and over. I think it's most successful.
Yeah, I mean, one of their biggest things is hope,
Yeah.
Even just the tiniest little hope can lead to bigger hope. It's definitely different than a property like Game of Thrones. I don't think one of their themes isn't exactly there's always hope, I mean,
yeah. Well, that's what makes me so mad when people compare Game of Thrones to Tolkien, because Tolkien is the Star Wars property of the proper fantasy world, because it's all about hope and new catastrophe.
It's very true. This has me thinking, I know in the circles we run in, it's like, can we not see Order 66 again? We don't need to see it anymore, ever again. We're good. We've seen all of the Order 66 stories. And we have seen a lot.
I mean, I've made that criticism before, and I'll probably make it again. But I guess the thing for me is always, does it actually serve the story? So I could make a very strong case in Fallen Order that the Order 66 segment truly serves the story in a way that I think some of the rest of them don't. Do I think it was necessary in the Bad Batch in order to tell that story? Not necessarily. I think it would be hard to take it out of Kenobi given the Reva storyline. But again, I don't think that means you necessarily need to show it. And I think it's almost a question of editing, because it's always going to be present if you're talking about the Jedi at any point past Order 66, because that's part of the sense memory of, I mean, you don't forget something like Order 66 if you're a Jedi. You don't just get over it. So it's present in that way, but to actually see it over and over again, I think that may be a fault of editing. And really careful and really difficult editing, where you think, is this truly necessary? Yes. Which is sometimes very hard.
Right. Do we need it from this perspective and this perspective over here? And then maybe the perspective from a bird flying overhead, or...
Well, we haven't actually seen the janitor's experience, or...
Oh, it's true. we did see them wheeling out dead Jedi out of the stormtrooper, or, you know, the clone troopers in the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah. That was on Camino, wasn't it? That was
Camino, yeah. There we go.
Well, that's really depressing.
Yeah. It was depressing, but that was a point of view that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Which was different than right before that, when the Bad Batch was going through Order 66. They totally changed Caleb's story from the comic, and I couldn't take any of it seriously because the fact that this little kid had Freddie Prinze Jr.'s like deep voice. I was like, what is going on? You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was fine with the Bad Batch. Like I watched it.
I think what's really interesting is, now that you've brought this up, I have complained that we've seen Order 66 too many times. I've complained more than once, but I don't actually hate any of them. Like, I just feel like it's a thing that we've seen a lot of times.
Yeah.
But like, when I think about them individually, none of them, like, I think the Bad Batch one might be the worst of the bunch but even then, I don't hate it, because it's nice to kind of see it. I mean, we've had it already in the Clone Wars from kind of Rex's perspective, but it is nice to get the clone version of it, because it is the complete stripping of their autonomy and the incredible discomfort that comes from that. And I did really like the engagement on those lines that we had in the Bad Batch about what it would be like to be a normal person and then suddenly be turned into a robot against your will.
Yeah. And almost like a personality change, which you did see, because their rigid command in their heads of like, oh, now you're a traitor if you're not agreeing with this.
Yes. Yeah. And so getting the clone's perspective is great. And what they did with Crosshair was quite interesting in that show. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
I mean, you can make an argument for every single one of them that it serves a purpose. Like, have we seen it a lot? Yeah.
That's the thing. I feel like they do serve a purpose, and they really serve a purpose in Fallen Order, and they served a purpose. Like, it's like you said, we have seen a lot of it. Yeah, I think we don't want to see it because it's so harrowing to watch, and it's so painful to see and have to experience it through someone else, another character, basically. But I don't think any of them were done poorly. Like, I think they did serve a pretty good purpose in each time you've seen it.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's just incredibly sad. I think that's why. You know, it's just how many more times can we watch a bunch of clone troopers open fire on Jedi?
Yeah.
Apparently a lot.
Well, and how many more are there if you count like the books and the comics? Like, how many versions of Order 66 actually exist in canon?
Right. There's a lot out there.
So many.
Yeah.
So pinging off of this, like, we're talking Order 66 and the Jedi experiencing something so horrific. There's this theme and kind of threaded through all of this with various characters of trauma and being or allowing yourself to be cut off from the Force once you experience this. And you see that with Obi-Wan. You see this with Sari and Cal in this game. And if we're gonna venture there, you do see it with Luke in the sequels. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's not Order 66, but it was something traumatic to him, and his reaction to it was to cut himself off from the Force. So why do you think, like, apart from maybe protecting themselves from the Empire, why do they do this? Like, why does this happen to them? Why do they cut themselves off from the Force? And what journey do they have to then take to restore that balance inside of them? And would it have been better to stay away from the Force?
I mean, we talked about this a little bit, I think, when we talked about, I can't remember which episode it was. It was somewhere around attachment or things people get wrong about the Jedi, something along those lines.
Anywhere we talked about the Jedi, probably.
Yeah, anywhere we talked about emotion, because we've talked about emotion quite a few times in various episodes. And to me, at least, there's a pretty clear, like, strong case that emotion really shapes the way that you use the Force, and the way that Darksiders talk about using anger or fear, and the way, you know, the light side, there's all these quotes about trust your feelings, search your feelings, and that's the way people access the Force. So if you have, I mean, trauma disrupts your feelings enormously, especially if you're thinking about it in terms of PTSD, or you no longer kind of have control of your feelings in the same way. And so it would be a bit like having an extra limb that you didn't really have full control over. And I can see why you would not want to exercise that at all. Like, if I had a third arm that would occasionally turn around and stab someone or slap me in the face, I'd probably pin it down too. Like,
yeah,
you know, if it's if it's a power that's closely tied to your emotional control and your emotional state, then I can see why either that it would no longer be accessible because of your lack of control over your emotional state, or that you would choose not to access it, whichever way you want to look at it. But that's always made sense to me. And then as you work through the grief and as you find ways of managing your emotions and returning to a state where you have, you know, like Annie said, you're not alone and you've moved through that. And when you've moved through the grief that you are feeling and you've come to a place where it's not gone, but a little bit more settled, then you can increase your access to the Force and use your magic third arm again.
Yeah. I wonder if like there's a larger metaphor in this on like, you know, your belief is gone. So like you also stop accessing that part of yourself because you got nothing left in you.
Oh, I'm sure you could do a really cool analysis on the Force's faith and losing faith and then regaining faith.
Yeah. Like I was just thinking just now, like, because the way you described it, I was like, I mean, that sounds a lot like a loss of faith in whatever belief system that you have, be it religious or spiritual. Yeah. I like that. I'm sure that's what George Lucas was trying to go at too. Like when if he wrote these arcs, some of them he must have.
What's interesting I find about, I guess, Obi-Wan and Luke, because I don't think Cal kind of expresses it. He expresses it more in a way of like, we need to stay in hiding for our own safety, which I think is kind of close to the way Obi-Wan talks about the Force, is he's like, you know, the Jedi are over, they're done, that's it, there are no more Jedi, get over it.
Yeah. But
he talks about, Luke explicitly says, oh, I don't believe in the Force anymore, so we just shouldn't have the Force. Like, the Jedi are over, mate. Like, because I feel this way. No one should ever use the Force. It doesn't belong to anyone. None of this training should ever exist, which I find really interesting, the different kind of facets of how, because I think for Obi-Wan, it's like a resignation of like, this thing has happened and things will never be the same again. For Cal, it's like, I will die if I do this, so the obvious conclusion is to not do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to protect themselves from...
Yeah, but that's not what's happening with Luke. I know we're diving into sequel territory, but I find it...
No, I like it. Because like in the first two you mentioned, it's a lot of fear and a lot of resignation, like you said. Mm. And with Luke, it was just casting out something because you've decided...
He didn't want anybody to be able to communicate with him. Like, he cut himself off from Leia.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Leia would have been able to communicate with him. He wanted to be alone.
Yeah. And I think fear's still a part of it. I mean, fear about what had happened and fear about how catastrophically wrong it had gone and fear that, you know, any further attempts, I guess, to revive the Jedi might go the same way and all that kind of stuff. But it is, I don't want to say it's a more selfish grief because I don't think that's fair, but it's certainly...
I think it was it wasn't, I wouldn't say selfish grief, but like, it was selfish in a way.
Yeah.
Like, he turned his back on his family and his friends. But that was Jake Skywalker. You know?
Yeah. Well, Jake Skywalker, I will give... So, like, because we're talking about it, I'm actually thinking about this a bit more. And I might be giving too much credit here to the people who wrote this. But I think when you are in that state of profound grief and a lot of fear, I think you stop caring about how your grief will affect others. Yeah. And I can see the selfishness. Like, we've all experienced some type of trauma and some type of loss, you know, at some point in our lives. And it's more about us at that point than others. And you don't realize maybe you don't realize what you're doing, and you're not confronted with what you're doing until somebody kind of shakes you and is like, dude, what are you doing? You know, I've had that happen with me in kind of difficult moments, or I was kind of a wake-up call. I feel like with Luke, right, was the wake-up call. And she's like, what the hell are you doing? That kind of makes you see what your actions are. So I can see why in this discussion, Luke being as selfish as he was, because you kind of stop caring about what the implication of your action is because you already suck.
Oh no, he didn't care. He didn't care one bit. That look he gave Rey when he was drinking that milk is not of a man that cared.
Oh God, that haunts my dreams.
Oh, not the milk.
Not the milk. It was so nasty.
Yeah. I think what's coloring it for me is that he is actually mean. Like, Obi-Wan is never mean. But like, meanness again, I mean, like you were saying, Flowers, like, I have definitely been hurting or whatever and been mean. Like, none of this is, I think it's all very compatible with someone who's going through something very difficult. Whether it's compatible with Luke Skywalker's character is maybe a different question, but it's certainly compatible with people, and you never know until you're kind of pushed to a point how you're going to shake out. And I do think that there is plenty that's interesting to look at in the way that he responds to something disastrous versus, you know, the way that Obi-Wan and Cal and all the other Jedi that we see. I mean, there's implied that Quinlan has not given up hope in the same way that Obi-Wan did, or if he did, it was shorter lived, and all of these different kind of responses. And I guess that's why I'm not that bothered by retelling the same story, is because you have so many different facets.
So you've just made me think of something, and I, again, maybe giving Rian Johnson too much credit than he deserves here. But one of the things that Luke from the original trilogy had is when he's disappointed in you, you know it. So like when he was disappointed in Han, just like, you know, fucking off at the end of, near the end of the first movie, he's just like, yeah, get your money. That's all you're good for.
He's such a drama queen about it all. He was
so bitter. And like, so if that's how he is, disappointed in somebody else, like if he's disappointed in himself, I can see where that self-hatred kind of comes out.
Yeah.
And how it can manifest into just the kind of craggly, mean old man that he was in The Last Jedi. Oh man, the leaps and bounds I went for this, but I kind of see it. Like if you actually think cerebrally about what that kind of situation can do to someone's mental state, I can see it.
No, I think there's loads to analyze there.
Yeah. We may have gone and drifted a little off topic, but I think it was worthy of this story of Fallen Order, which we're kind of capping out now, because I think we've talked about all the things I wanted to talk about. So any last thoughts on Fallen Order, character, game? Has this maybe convinced you, the audience, to consider playing it, or maybe watching it on YouTube and see people go through the story?
Yeah, it's worth it to watch a couple of play-alongs. I've watched a couple of them. I'll never play the game. I'm sorry.
No, you don't need to. I mean, that's what this is for.
I'm not a gamer. I mean, if there was ever like Jedi Fallen Order hidden objects, you know, I would play.
I was just going to say, what's it like watching it? Because I really like the story, but like, is it still a good story to just watch it? Am I enjoying the story because I'm playing it? Or is it actually like, if you watch gameplay, does it still feel like a good story?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially with the way that like some YouTubers will edit it, you know? And I mean, that's like, people make millions of dollars just playing video games and people watching them play video games.
Yeah.
I know. I always think that when I'm playing and I'm like, no one's paying me.
I think that, but then I'm like, no one wants to see me die 15 times playing Dragon Age.
So many times in Fallen Order, no one would watch.
Oh, and so pathetically. I've died pathetically a lot in Fallen Order.
There's like a bit with a slide in one of the temples. And the number of times I fell off that slide was just unreal.
Horrible. There was like one in the trees that you had to figure out.
Yeah.
I died so many times.
I was going to say, the only negative point about Fallen Order is that there are Wookiees. And they're not skippable.
That is unfortunate.
It is.
It's twofold, because there are Wookiees and there's Saw Gerrera. Yes, yeah. Saw Gerrera does show up in this game. He's a shady mofo in the game too. And I wasn't too happy to see him.
Him and the Wookiees, man, they're everywhere. Like,
they're everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, here's some things we can use less of in the Star Wars universe. Saw Gerrera, which, I mean, he's coming up in Andor probably. So.
Oh, God.
He's back.
He's back. Order 66.
Wookiees.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be slightly done with there's a random child and a man who doesn't like children. What will happen?
I am so tired of that one.
Yeah, might be a little.
No shade, but a little bit of shade because
It's cute. Like, yeah, there's some kind of.
There's a charm to it.
There's a charm, and also, like, there's some kind of biological reaction. I'm still a meat sack at the end of the day, and I'm like, oh, look at the dad. But then I think, God, you need You need better hobbies. You need to stop this.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be in that storyline for a few years at least. We're never going to hear the end of it. But I also sometimes feel like I'm hypocritical because like my love for the Padawan master, family relationship is so strong.
It's true.
And you see that a whole lot too. So I understand. I understand the appeal, but I also don't want to see the dad and child all the time either.
Anyway, no more Wookiees, please. Or at least make the level skippable. Optional Wookiees, please. But I'm not ruining anybody else's Wookiee fun times. But I just can't with the dialogue. I just can't. I can't sit. Especially if the dialogue is unskippable and it's just for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, please.
Okay, but you had to have felt bad when you see the dead Wookiees on like the floor. Because I saw a bunch of dead Wookiees and I was like, aw, these little dead carpets.
I'm going to be honest, Flowers. I did not because I'm that heartless. I mean, I wasn't like throwing a party, but I was like, can I please get off Kashyyyk now?
Kashyyyk is rough, yeah. I was glad to be off
That's
Kashyyyk.
where Saw Gerrera is, isn't it?
Yeah, that is where
double whammy. I was like, this planet.
That's why I remembered it, because I was like, oh yeah, Kashyyyk, Wookiees, and Saw Gerrera, the two things I didn't want to experience.
Anyway, I apologize if you like Wookiees. It's a great level. Have fun.
If you like Wookiees, you're going to love the second level. It's real fun. And you will be sad because you see a few dead ones.
Yeah.
All right. If we feel like we've covered all we've wanted to chat about, shall we move to the lightning round?
Sure.
Lightning round question number 1. Who in the Star Wars universe do you believe would make an excellent Night Sister?
In the Star Wars universe?
Yes, but maybe broader. Maybe in any universe. Star Wars or other properties.
Oh,
okay. Much bigger question.
Scarlet Witch, man.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's my answer to everything, though.
If it was someone in Star Wars, who do you think would be a cool Night Sister? Maybe answer both, like Star Wars and external.
See, my gut instinct was Padme, but I think that she has too many do-gooder qualities to fit in with the Night Sisters. She'd be bullied, but she'd also be like really good at it. I feel like she would have enough competence, and I think she can kill a man from 10 paces already.
Yeah, she was my answer, because I was like, she would be incredible, powerful, and she'd probably get a seat on the Senate and get Dathomir on the map.
Yeah. I mean, Scarlet Witch is the correct answer. but if we're going Star Wars, Padme. Maybe Leia.
I would go with Rey.
Ooh, she would make an interesting Night Sister. Yeah, I can see that too.
When she had those pointy teeth, I was like, yeah, girl.
I love her little like Bilbo scene.
Yes, exactly. She's got some darkness in her. I would love to see her on Dathomir.
Question number 2. We've seen a lot of planets in Star Wars and shows, in lots and lots of planets. What planet do you want to see more of that we haven't seen enough of? Like, where would you want to see an actual episode or whatever explored more in live action?
Dathomir. Like live action. Especially the Dathomir from one of the Legends books, The Courtship of Princess Leia. Like which is where the witches first appeared. That Dathomir, I mean, it's a bit different than what we have in canon. If they could just like merge those two things in a live action show, that would be absolutely amazing. They had these like witch tribes in this matriarchal society, and I would just love to see that in live action. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think so too. I would love to see that.
Yeah, it's a good one. My heart says Alderaan. I mean, we did see a little bit of it, but it was nice. I'd watch a crime drama set on Alderaan. Or...
Oh my gosh. Well, I was thinking about a crime drama. Okay. Okay, this is sort of spoilers for Andor this week, maybe. There's some like really cool music at the end, and it made me think that it would be perfect for a crime drama on this particular planet. As soon as you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. CSI New Planet.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the OG CSI is CSI Coruscant, lower layers.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, be like cyberpunk.
Yeah, that's the Las Vegas.
The Las Vegas.
Yeah. Be the Las Vegas, and then this new one would be CSI Miami.
Yeah. Alderaan can be
And you-
CSI New York. That lasted like one season and wasn't very good.
Yeah, no, that was bad. I love CSI Cyberpunk though. I
Yeah.
mean,
That'd be cool.
they could come up with some like amazing gadgets to catch.
Yeah. Well, like, if it was just like some Jedi who had like Obi-Wan energy in a bar and was chopping people's hands off left and right, I don't know what, like a grizzly old Jedi who was like, oh, I don't go off world anymore because I can only chop people's hands off. And then they like, I don't know why he sounds like this, but then he does investigations in the lower levels. It'd be brilliant.
That would be amazing.
What if this person was someone who was like sent to the Agricor and they eventually got off world and this is what they do now?
Yeah. The armed farmer.
The armed farmer couldn't make it in the academy, Jedi Academy, sent to the Agricor. Now he does crime scene investigation.
It's all about the Agricor, guys. The Agricor is where it's at.
We've mentioned now the Agricor in the last 3 episodes.
It's because I'm bringing it back. The Agricor will rise.
You're making Agricor sexy again.
Yeah, I'm going to make it fetch.
So my planet pick was Naboo because we do not see it really much again, and I want to see it in live action. And again, it was beautiful, like the places that they filmed it. So I would love just to see. I'd love to see Naboo again. All right, final question. Getting a little heated here. Maybe some opinions will fly. Who would win in a fight if both of these people were turned to the dark side? Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon?
I don't like it at all.
What do you mean turn to the dark side?
So they're both dark side users or Sith. They're like the worst versions of themselves and both incredibly powerful. Who would win in a duel? If you could see the looks on their faces right now.
I think Obi-Wan would win because because of just like how much he studied with his lightsaber, so that what happened to Qui-Gon wouldn't happen to him.
He also beats Anakin.
Yeah,
and I think that's got to be a short list.
And he beats Maul, which is the person who killed Qui-Gon.
Yeah, so he came out of the Maul confrontation alive. Then he beats Anakin. I think it'd be Obi-Wan.
See, I mean, you raise really good points. Logically, I think it would be Obi-Wan. But I think it could be Qui-Gon because he knows people and he gets people really well. And he knows the inside and outside of what people are. So I think he has the mental manipulation high ground when it comes to a duel. I think he could get inside Obi-Wan's head.
Yeah.
And win that way. I mean, no holds barred. I think Qui-Gon's also, I think because his connection to the Force is so unique, I think he could definitely kick some butt as a Darksider.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like epic wizard battle, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Saruman and Gandalf is a good...
Well, he was trained by Saruman.
There you go.
I don't like thinking about this. I don't like thinking of either of them as a Darksider.
I'm so sorry, but I have to give you at least one difficult question.
Yeah, whenever like I'll come across like fan art on Tumblr sometimes, like Darkside Obi-Wan, he's supposed to look like sexy, and I'm always like, oh, cursed image.
Right, because it just doesn't compute for me. I don't want to see any Darkside Obi-Wan. I was like, that's a paradox or like an oxymoron. Like, this just doesn't exist.
It's just Obi-Wan with dark circles, you know.
But like, I watched the Mortis arc. I understood the thesis. That man is not going to the dark side.
No. He's as good as you can get. He's just a good man. I think that wraps our discussion on Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoyed this story and this game. Hopefully this conversation has given our listeners some insight on the game and the story, especially if rumors are true and that some of these characters are coming to live action in a Disney Plus.
I don't believe it'll ever happen in a million years.
I believe.
They've been teasing for years. There's just a bunch of teases.
Annie, they said this about Hayden Christensen. And if that can happen, anything can happen. I believe it.
Well, at a minimum, we're getting Jedi Fallen Order 2, eh? So.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome in itself.
Yeah, they'll be back
He'll be back. I'm very excited for it. I can't wait for that game to come out, to be honest.
Oh, God, no, me neither. Although, if they make me buy a PS5, I'm going to be so cranky.
I'm going to be cranky, but you know what? I would do it because I love that game so much.
For Cal.
For Cal, I will drop $500. Fine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a good lightning round question. Who in the Star Wars universe would you drop $500 for?
Okay, clearly Cal Kestis is it for me, and Marin, and the Mantis crew.
The list is long, worryingly long. I don't have enough money to pay out everyone that I would drop money for.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's like Ahsoka and Padme and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Ezra Bridger.
You know, I find myself doing that all the time. I think Ezra Miller, I'm talking about Ezra Bridger, but I say Ezra Miller, and it's happening with like Daemon Targaryen too. I just say Matt Damon because it's like Matt Smith and Daemon Targaryen. It's horrible. The difference is that Matt Damon's an okay guy. Ezra Miller is like
not an okay guy.
Not an okay guy.
Yeah, sorry, Ezra Bridger. Sometimes we tarnish your name with the wrong person.
Yeah, so sorry, Ezra.
So sorry.
He's a pure spirit.
He is.
That we used to call a brat, but now we love him.
Yeah, it's become brat brackets affectionate.
Yeah.
I love it though. But yes, hopefully this episode gave all y'all some insight, and maybe this might convince you if you own a PlayStation or I guess whatever platform this thing is available on, to maybe give it a go. And it's a really cool story, and I love that it's part of canon, and I hope if you never want to play the game, maybe this episode gave you some cool information and got you interested in it.
Yeah, it's a story worth checking out, definitely, whether you're a gamer or not.
100% agree. Thanks for tuning into the Kyber Collective. If you like what you heard, give us a like, and also give us a comment if you really like what you heard and you want to chat with us. These things make us much easier to find online, and to be honest, we could use it. If you'd like to keep up to date with us, our episodes you can always subscribe to us, and we're on Twitter at Kyber Collective, so please chat with us. We are active, hopefully more now, but we're usually very active on there, and just drop us a line. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks, and until then, remember, the crystal is the heart of the blade. The heart is the crystal of the Jedi is the crystal of the Force, and the Force is the blade of the heart. All are intertwined. The crystal, the blade, the Jedi. You are one. Both of these things help us be made to eat. That part is so hard to say. I have no words.
We can
hate it.
Rewrite it then, or say
something. I have felt this for months.
Well, don't use it. It's okay.
It's established now.
It doesn't matter.
Let's try that again. I'm going to freestyle this, okay? We're just going to freestyle it.